When I was maybe about 8 years old, I went to a birthday party at a friend's house, and this was sometime, I guess, in 2006 or 2007. I think it might have been around late fall, early winter when this happened, and this was honestly something that I will never forget. To make it a cut to the chase, I was a pretty shy kid. I mainly didn't really go to parties that much as a young kid, but I did get to go to a couple parties, mainly just close friends that I trust and all, and people I've known forever. However, one house I went to, which of course was a birthday party by a boy named Jordan. Jordan was turning 8 at the time of this story, and like I said, I can't remember when this was. But he was in the second grade or grade 2, and Jordan and I got along just fine. And when he invited me to this party, I was pretty much the only grade-free student in this house with a bunch of other people. I didn't really have an issue with it, but it was something really odd that you don't normally see. There was this van that pulled up that I had not recognized before while I was playing inside the house. Since I was in the house, I ended up looking over to see the white van. The sign ended up having some sort of the text that said free candy. I obviously knew that this person might be suspicious, so I ended up maybe just brushing it off and maybe just think it was something else. However, though, that's not what it does though, and it doesn't end there. Something really weird happened. Whatever this person was got out of the vehicle and was looking over at the kids at the party. Some of us were playing in the snow, and some of us were already inside, and this party was going on. One of the kids walked up to him, and this man asked him, "Do you want candy?" The kid decided to go with this guy, and I can't remember if it was a boy or a girl. But Jordan's dad was working by plowing the driveway when he looked up and saw that this man was taking one of the kids. It wasn't Jordan, from what I do know, but it was some other kid. "Hey, what are you doing with one of the kids?" The man immediately let go of this man. The man let go of this kid and ended up jumping back into the car or van, spewed it out. I had no idea who he was, and I clearly don't ever want to know who he was. This just comes to show that you should always keep an eye on kids, even at parties, because anything could happen to anyone. I still kind of think about this story every now and then, but it's not really the type to make you jump out of your pants or anything. But this was just one story that one of the kids could have been kidnapped and never been seen again. Which this brings a lesson to always watch your kids, because anything could happen. For a bit of context, this happened to one of my friends about maybe 10 years ago when she was 12 years old at the time of this story. Now, this was sometime in 2012, and it was during the summertime, which she had a little bit of a birthday slumber party for her birthday. Now, my friend at the time had a slumber party at her place. Her name was Annabelle, and Annabelle really loved sleepovers. She had them pretty much almost all the time, except for one birthday when she was about 10, since her parents wanted to do something a bit different. However, since she hadn't done a slumber party in a while, she suggested they do a slumber party. Now, Annabelle invited at least a few girlfriends of her to spend the night at her place, which were close friends from her neighborhood. One of her other friends' name was Christina, and the other girl, who happened to be at least a year older than Annabelle, named Tiffany. Tiffany and Christina had got along just fine without any issues, but However, they did only have maybe one issue, but that was maybe a few years prior before this incident. Annabelle, along with her friends, were sleeping over in the living room, which her parents always liked the idea of doing that. They would get some snacks, pizza, and the cake, and they would end up eating before they have their movie session. However, this time, since it was during the summer, they decided to go play flashlight tag in the forest, which they had no issue with that. So they ended up going in the forest to do some flashlight tag. It was pretty fun as Annabelle, along with some of her friends, were playing flashlight tag. Kind of like Manhunt, so to speak, but of course, Annabelle's two sisters that were 15 and 16 ended up being there to supervise them in case if something were to go wrong. Annabelle and her friends were pretty much the runners, ran as far as they could, and as Annabelle kept running along with her friends, they ended up splitting in all directions. However, Annabelle was the farthest, but she ended up seeing what seemed to look like some old shed. It looked like it had been abandoned for years, but there was some strange light in the distance. Annabelle couldn't really tell if that was any of her sisters finding them, so she was going to end up going towards it, but however though, since it was pretty dark, it started to get a bit windy. Annabelle ended up looking over to see that there was no one around. But what the frightening thing was is that she ended up hearing what seems to be trees and branches snapping. It honestly got her really worked up, thinking someone or something could be in there. She ended up calling out if someone was out there, but there was no response. And this was honestly getting really freaked out. Annabelle started to run back the way she came, not wanting to stay any longer to see what was beyond there. She got as far as she could away from that area of the forest, and eventually she returned home. When she returned home, her sisters were there, as well as her two friends, and they found out something that was really freaky. They said that some cops had came over to their place and said that there had been a serial killer and kidnapper in the area. But when Annabelle explained that there was the house and she felt that she was being watched possibly, that was when everyone stayed inside for the remainder of the night. They never went back out in the woods at night again. However, they had no idea who was following Annabelle and what was this person doing. But despite all that, Annabelle is still not sure who or what followed her in those woods, especially on her birthday sleepover. She still gets chills when she talks about this story and even thinks about it, but she does her best not to let it get the better of her. She's now 22 and she's now living in Seattle, and she never forgot that moment. They moved to Seattle at least sometime in 2015, as they kind of had a similar incident again on Annabelle's 14th birthday at a slumber party, when some dude broke into their house to try to steal some of her parents' jewelry. They never caught that man, as far as Annabelle knows, but they weren't really sure as to why he targeted the house years back. That was still a remaining mystery to this day. Now, this somehow took place when I was about turning 7 or 8 years old at this birthday party. Now, at the time of the story, I used to have birthday parties quite a lot when I was a young kid. McDonald's Play Place was the best one. I was turning I was 7 or 8 years old on my birthday at the time of the story. I can't exactly remember what age, but I do know I was a kid. I had a bunch of friends from my school to come to this party, and we enjoyed it so much. However, one year at McDonald's, this one was definitely a weirded out one that I wasn't really sure of. Now, my parents were both there, and a few parents with their kids were there as well. And they were supervising the kids while they were eating their food from McDonald's and even playing at the play place. I was one of those kids that were doing that, and I was basically having fun playing on the GameCube on the little area they had outside of the play equipment. They even had at least an air hockey table at the time, and we enjoyed it pretty much a lot. However, I noticed there was this one dude who seemed to be maybe in his late 40s, early 50s. I'm assuming he must have been one of the dads of the parents. So I assumed that he might have been the dad. I would continue playing, but this guy had what seemed to be his camera and was zooming in on things and was kind of looking concerned and looking around. I honestly thought it was his dad, so I probably shrugged it off as nothing. All of a sudden, there was a worker who came to bring out some meals in a tray when she noticed this man looking different. She ended up confiscating his camera, which I couldn't really understand or see much, but I just ignored it and continued on. This wasn't until at least 10 years later when the conversation was brought up again. I asked my mom, who was that guy that had the camera, and the camera was confiscated when he was escorted out of the play place years ago on my birthday, Mom. My mom ended up saying that this dude was pretty much wanted for sexual harassment and etc. He had been using his camera and he was taking photos of children, zooming in on their faces and other areas. The police ended up confiscating more of it, and they were lucky that they didn't see any photos of me in them. I don't even know what this man was doing or whatever, but he was sent to prison for a couple years, I think maybe 20 or so, and was put on probation. I never saw this man again or never knew him, which I'm glad as hell I never saw him again. Now, I wanted to point out that this happened to one of my teachers in elementary school back in 2010. Her son's birthday was at that time, and her son was turning 10 years old. She took her son to Chuck E. Cheese's, which was a really big popular area for birthday parties. Her son really enjoyed Chuck E. Cheese, and he did have an older brother who was at least 13, and his sister who was just about 7 years old. They enjoyed going to Chuck E. Cheese's for birthday parties, and it became a tradition for them. Now, my teacher's name, we'll call her Miss Molestia. Molestia happened to be, or Miss M, happened to be one of the teachers there. The teacher happened to be a very strict teacher. However, she did have a soft spot for kids, so she didn't really have that issue. Now, Miss M ended up looking over, and she ended up seeing a bunch of kids coming for the party, and they did presents and have pizza and watching the animatronics at Chuck E. Cheese, as well as playing the games. However, Miss M ended up looking over to see that there was this one person who seemed to be depressed or something. She ended up looking over, and whatever this person did went over in the other room. It happened to be the employee, so she followed the employee, thinking that maybe the employee was depressed. However, when she looked over, she could see that this employee ended up putting a sadistic smile and held what seemed to be her son. Miss M ended up demanding her to let her son go, but she said if he wants to be stuffed in the suit with Chucky. This honestly got Miss M to go for the knife as she let her son go. Then Miss M jabbed the knife right into the worker's forearm, causing her to scream in pain. As Miss M got her son and kids, the cops were called, as well as staff, and took this woman away. It turns out the worker working at Chuck E. Cheese was mentally unstable, to which is why she was trying to do this to kids. However, this worker was sent to a mental hospital, but there was nothing really quite understanding at that party. Why was she mentally unstable and working there? And why did she hold Miss M's son? That really still gets her question to this day. And if she did not even see that Miss M was there, chances are that worker probably would have gotten away with it. What really still got Miss M stunned was how come the worker didn't even notice she was being followed. They still haven't heard from the old worker about this incident, and currently, Miss M did not want to know what this worker wanted. But however, when police questioned her about the incident at Chuck E. Cheese, she said she didn't even remember doing anything or remember having a kid around her or threatening anyone with a knife. That's still freaky to this day. And this is why Miss M and her kids never celebrated their birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese's again, because they always look back at this incident.